How does someone go from red carpets and million-dollar deals to a locked cell with no way out? These 25 Hollywood stars once had everything: fame, power, and non-stop applause. Today, their names no longer appear on movie posters but in court records and prison files. Far from the spotlight, they're rotting behind bars, abandoned by the same industry that once protected them. This isn't a story about fame, it's about a brutal fall. Stay with us because some of these names will shock you. Zach Avery. In Hollywood, success often feels just one deal away. That belief shaped the rise and fall of Zach Avery, an aspiring actor who was never truly famous but knew how to sound like someone on the verge of a breakthrough. He carried himself with confidence, spoke the language of the industry, and made others feel they were being invited into something exclusive. Avery claimed he was acquiring film rights and preparing projects for major streaming platforms. The names he mentioned were impressive and familiar, and his explanations sounded convincing. To friends, associates, and even people close to him, it felt like a rare chance to profit from Hollywood deals normally reserved for insiders. Between 2014 and 2019, Avery collected large sums of money from investors. Some early participants appeared to receive returns which strengthened trust and encouraged more people to join. The operation looked active and successful from the outside, creating the impression of a growing entertainment venture. In reality, there were no verified contracts or confirmed partnerships. New investments were used to cover earlier promises, allowing the story to continue. What Avery was selling was not film rights, but belief in a future that did not exist. Eventually, authorities uncovered the truth. The carefully crafted narrative collapsed under investigation, and the Hollywood opportunity Avery promoted was revealed to be an illusion. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison in order to repay more than $230 million. Zach Avery's story remains a stark reminder that in a city built on dreams, confidence without proof can be more dangerous than failure itself. Josh Duggar. The case of Josh Duggar marked one of the most unsettling falls in reality television history. For years, Duggar was known as a public figure associated with faith, family values, and a carefully curated image of moral certainty. That image unraveled when federal authorities shifted the spotlight from television fame to criminal accountability. Prosecutors alleged that Duggar knowingly accessed and stored illegal digital material involving minors. Rather than relying on emotional language, the case was built on technical evidence, including computer data timelines and expert analysis. The courtroom focus remained on intent control and responsibility under federal law, not on public opinion or reputation. During the trial, the defense argued that the activity could have been caused by someone else with access to the device. Prosecutors countered with forensic evidence that tied the activity directly to Duggar. After reviewing the facts, the jury concluded that the actions were intentional and criminal. In December 2021, Duggar was found guilty and later sentenced to more than 12 years in federal prison, followed by strict supervised release. The judge emphasized the seriousness of the offense and the need to protect vulnerable individuals, making it clear that fame and status offered no protection in court. The conviction permanently ended Duggar's television career and shattered the public image that once defined him. His story has since become a symbol of how carefully constructed personas can collapse when confronted with evidence. What do you think about Josh Duggar's case? Do you believe his public image played a role in how people initially viewed him? Share your thoughts in the comments. Ryan Grantham. For a time, Ryan Grantham looked like another young talent quietly building a future in film and television. He appeared in recognizable projects and worked steadily, the kind of career path that suggested patience and potential rather than instant stardom. From the outside, there was little to hint at what was unfolding behind closed doors. In 2020, Grantham's name suddenly surfaced not in casting news, but in court records. The case shocked the public and the entertainment industry alike. Authorities confirmed that he had caused the death of his own mother, an event that immediately reframed his public image and ended any sense of a normal career trajectory. In the months that followed, court proceedings revealed a young man struggling with severe mental health issues. Reports presented during sentencing described long-standing emotional distress, deep self-loathing, and thoughts of self-harm. The court concluded that these struggles played a significant role in the tragic outcome, though they did not remove responsibility. Grantham pleaded guilty to second-degree murder under Canadian law. As a result, he received a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 14 years. The ruling reflected both the gravity of the crime and the legal framework governing such cases in Canada. Today, Ryan Grantham's story stands as one of the most unsettling examples of a promising life derailed. It is not a tale of ambition or greed, but of untreated inner turmoil reaching a devastating breaking point. In an industry that often focuses on success and image, his case is a stark reminder that unseen struggles can carry consequences far beyond the spotlight. One subscription helps us keep bringing you deeper stories like this. Shannon Richardson. The criminal case of Shannon Richardson became federal not because of fame, but because of the nature of the offense. What started as a personal conflict quickly escalated into actions that triggered national-level concern and a full federal investigation. Prosecutors stated that Richardson knowingly sent threatening letters to high-profile public officials. Under U.S. law, any threat directed at elected leaders is treated as a serious federal crime regardless of intent or background. The investigation focused on evidence planning and accountability, not emotional explanations or dramatic detail. The case took a critical turn when Richardson attempted to place blame on her estranged husband. That claim led investigators to examine communication records and forensic findings more closely. According to court documents, the evidence pointed back to Richardson herself, undermining her attempt to shift responsibility and strengthening the prosecution's case. Faced with the weight of the evidence, Richardson accepted a plea agreement. She was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison and ordered to pay significant financial penalties. The judge emphasized that the punishment reflected the danger such actions pose to public safety and emergency systems, not her limited acting career. Richardson's case illustrates how quickly poor judgment can cross into serious criminal territory. Once federal lines are crossed, personal motives no longer matter. The law responds only to actions and their consequences. Do you think Shannon Richardson fully understood how serious her actions were, or did emotion cloud her judgment? Let us know your opinion in the comments. Skylar Julius DeLeon. Skylar DeLeon once looked like someone headed for a steady future in television. In the 1990s, he appeared in popular shows and briefly tasted the excitement of Hollywood attention. He was young, visible, and surrounded by the promise that small roles could eventually lead to something bigger. For a moment, his path seemed open. Away from the screen, however, DeLeon struggled to maintain stability. As the years passed, his acting opportunities faded and his life became increasingly marked by legal trouble and poor decisions. By the early 2000s, he was living on the margins, far removed from the image he once projected as a rising performer. In 2004, DeLeon became involved in a crime that shocked both the public and those who remembered his early career. He was convicted for his role in the killing of a couple during a failed robbery. The case revealed a person almost unrecognizable from the young actor viewers had seen years earlier. During the trial, prosecutors described deliberate actions motivated by money while the defense attempted to shift blame. The jury was not persuaded. DeLeon was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death under California law, a sentence that was later converted to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole following changes in state policy. His fall from a minor television actor to a convicted criminal was swift and irreversible. Skylar DeLeon's story is one of wasted potential and unanswered questions. It raises uncomfortable thoughts about how quickly a life can drift from opportunity to isolation. In Hollywood, failure is common, but DeLeon's path shows how losing direction entirely can lead to consequences far beyond obscurity. Subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest video. Joseph's son. The criminal history of Joseph's son stands in sharp contrast to his brief moment in Hollywood. Many viewers remember him only as a minor character in Austin Powers, a lighthearted comedy that brought him short-lived recognition. That moment, however, would soon be overshadowed by a far darker reality. After his acting career faded, Son became involved in a serious criminal case that led to his conviction for violent offenses. Prosecutors presented evidence showing deliberate and unlawful actions, and the court sentenced him to a lengthy prison term. Any remaining connection to the entertainment world ended there, replaced by life behind bars. While serving that sentence in a California state prison, Son was later implicated in another fatal incident involving a fellow inmate. Authorities launched an internal investigation focusing on responsibility rather than speculation. Prosecutors argued that Sun's actions directly contributed to the death, while the defense attempted to frame the event as an unfortunate prison altercation. The jury ultimately found Sun guilty of a homicide-related charge. The judge imposed the maximum possible sentence, adding decades to his incarceration. Given his prior conviction, the ruling all but guaranteed that Sun would spend the rest of his life in prison. Joseph Sun's story is no longer about movies or missed opportunities. It is a cautionary tale about repeated choices and escalating consequences. Fame, even fleeting, offered no protection once patterns of violence defined his path. Amy Locane. Amy Locane was once seen as a rising face of early 1990s cinema. She gained attention with a breakout role in Cry Baby, appearing alongside established stars and quickly becoming associated with youthful promise and mainstream success. At that stage, her career looked like it was only beginning. As the years passed, Locane stepped away from the spotlight. Acting opportunities became less frequent, and her life shifted toward something far more private and ordinary. Unlike many Hollywood stories, there were no public scandals or dramatic headlines until one night changed everything. In 2010, Locane was involved in a serious traffic incident in New Jersey while driving under the influence of alcohol. The crash resulted in the death of another woman and left lasting consequences for everyone involved. What had been a single reckless decision quickly turned into a life-altering legal case. Locane was convicted on charges related to the incident and sentenced to prison. The case drew renewed attention years later due to appeals and resentencing, placing her back in the public eye not as an actress but as a defendant. Each court appearance reopened discussion about responsibility, accountability, and the irreversible impact of impaired driving. After serving time, Locane attempted to rebuild her life away from Hollywood. However, the shadow of the case continued to follow her, resurfacing through legal developments and public debate. Her story no longer centered on film credits but on consequences. Amy Locane's fall is a sobering reminder that fame does not shield anyone from the results of a single moment of poor judgment. In a world that often glamorizes excess, her story stands as a quiet warning about how quickly everything can be lost when responsibility is ignored. Sarah Ferthian. The criminal case involving Sarah Ferthian drew attention not because of celebrity, but because of the nature of the offenses and the sharp contrast with her professional image. Ferthian was known as a disciplined martial artist and stunt performer who worked on major productions including Doctor Strange. To colleagues, she represented control, precision, and professionalism. That reputation collapsed when UK authorities concluded a long-running investigation into unlawful conduct involving a minor. Prosecutors focused on behavior that occurred repeatedly over several years. Rather than detailing specific acts, the court concentrated on intent awareness and the consistent crossing of strict legal boundaries. The case centered on abuse of trust within a private setting where responsibility and consent are clearly defined by law. A significant aspect of the trial was the involvement of Ferthian's husband, who faced similar charges and received a longer sentence. The defense argued that Ferthian had been influenced or pressured within the relationship. However, the court rejected that claim, ruling that evidence showed she acted knowingly and voluntarily and therefore bore full personal responsibility. Ferthian was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 8 years in prison. In delivering the sentence, the judge emphasized that professional success, physical discipline, and past achievements could not mitigate the seriousness of the crimes. The ruling focused on accountability and the lasting harm caused by violations of trust. With the verdict, Sarah Ferthian's career in the film industry effectively ended. Her case stands as a clear reminder that reputation and skill offer no protection when the law determines that fundamental boundaries have been knowingly crossed. Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson's story took its darkest turn not on a set but inside the justice system. For years, his public image remained tied to comedy nostalgia and the success of a long-running television sitcom. Behind the scenes, however, a very different story was slowly moving toward the courts. The case against Danny Masterson emerged when several women came forward with allegations connected to incidents from the early 2000s. Individually, the claims took time to surface. Together, they formed a pattern serious enough to draw the full attention of prosecutors. What followed was not a media spectacle, but a long and methodical legal process built on testimony timelines and credibility. When formal charges were filed in 2020, Masterson's standing in Hollywood shifted instantly. His talent agency cut ties, professional relationships dissolved, and the industry that once embraced him went silent. The focus moved away from his career and squarely onto the courtroom where celebrity carried no weight. During trial proceedings, the emphasis remained on responsibility and the impact of abuse rather than dramatic reenactments. Jurors were asked to consider whether influence and social power had been misused and whether the accounts presented showed a consistent pattern of behavior. The case advanced slowly, reflecting the seriousness of the accusations and the stakes involved. Masterson was ultimately convicted and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. With that ruling, his acting career effectively ended. The verdict resonated far beyond one individual, reinforcing a broader shift in how high-profile figures are held accountable. Today, Danny Masterson's name is no longer associated with sitcom humor or television success. Instead, it serves as a reminder that fame may delay consequences, but it does not erase them. Toby Willis. The criminal case of Toby Willis shocked audiences because it stood in direct opposition to the image he presented to the world. As the father and leader of the Willis family, Willis was portrayed on television as a devoted parent guiding a talented, faith-focused household. That carefully maintained image would later collapse under federal investigation. According to court records, Willis engaged in repeated illegal conduct involving minors within his own family circle over a period of years. Prosecutors avoided explicit detail and instead emphasized the duration pattern and abuse of authority involved. The case centered on the betrayal of trust and the misuse of parental power factors that significantly increased the severity of the charges under U.S. law. The investigation began after one victim came forward, prompting authorities to uncover a broader pattern of misconduct. Evidence showed the behavior was deliberate and sustained not a single lapse in judgment. Faced with the evidence, Willis ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges. In 2017, he was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison with no possibility of early release. The court also ordered financial restitution and lifetime registration as a sex offender. The judge stated that the sentence reflected the seriousness of the crimes and the lasting harm caused, not Willis's public persona or television success. The fallout was immediate. The family's television program was canceled and the image of wholesome success vanished overnight. Toby Willis's case remains a powerful reminder that public virtue can hide private wrongdoing. Do you think the family's public image made this case more disturbing, or would the outcome have been the same regardless of fame? Share your thoughts in the comments. Harvey Weinstein. For years, Harvey Weinstein operated at the highest level of Hollywood power. His influence over film financing, awards campaigns, and careers was so vast that few dared to challenge him. That power would later become a central issue in the criminal cases that brought him down. The legal reckoning began when multiple women independently reported experiences that raised serious concerns about Weinstein's conduct over a long period of time. Rather than focusing on graphic detail, prosecutors framed their cases around patterns, authority, and the misuse of professional control. The question before the courts was not fame, but whether power had been used to pressure and silence others. In New York, Weinstein was charged, tried, and ultimately convicted on felony counts related to sexual assault. The jury's decision marked a historic moment, signaling a shift in how the justice system treats powerful figures. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, rejecting arguments that his status, age, or past achievements should lessen accountability. While serving that sentence, Weinstein faced separate charges in California. After another trial, he received an additional conviction and a further prison sentence, extending his time behind bars by more than a decade. The cumulative punishment ensured that the legal consequences would define the remainder of his life. Throughout both cases, Weinstein maintained his innocence. His defense teams emphasized procedural arguments and challenged witness credibility, while prosecutors underscored consistency and corroboration. The courts ultimately sided with the evidence presented. Today, Harvey Weinstein's name is no longer associated with awards or box office success. Instead, it stands as a symbol of how unchecked authority can collapse under scrutiny. His case reshaped conversations about power accountability and the limits of influence, proving that even the most entrenched figures can be held responsible when the system finally confronts them. If you're still watching, take a moment to hit subscribe. Ian Watkins. The criminal case of Ian Watkins is widely regarded as one of the most shocking scandals in modern music history. At the height of his career, Watkins was the lead singer of the rock band Lost Prophets, selling millions of albums and commanding a devoted global fan base. His public image was built on success, influence, and admiration. That image collapsed in 2012 when British authorities arrested Watkins following a long investigation into extremely serious offenses involving minors. Prosecutors focused on evidence gathered from digital devices, communications, and witness testimony. Rather than relying on explicit descriptions, the case centered on intent, planning, and repeated violations of the law over an extended period. The court heard that Watkins abused his position and access, exploiting trust in ways that crossed the most fundamental legal and moral boundaries. Investigators emphasized that the crimes were not isolated incidents, but part of a sustained pattern of behavior. The severity of the case placed it among the most serious of its kind in the UK legal system. Watkins pleaded guilty to multiple charges and in 2013 was sentenced to 35 years in prison with additional post-release restrictions. The judge described the crimes as exceptionally grave and stated that the sentence reflected the need to protect the public above all else. Lost Prophets disbanded immediately, and Watkins' music career was erased almost overnight. His name became synonymous not with art, but with betrayal and abuse of power. Michael Jace. Michael Jace built a solid career playing law enforcement figures, most notably on the television series The Shield. On screen, he embodied authority, discipline, and control. For years, audiences associated his face with order and justice, never suspecting that his real life was moving toward a tragic and irreversible collapse. In 2014, Jace's name entered the public record under devastating circumstances. Authorities confirmed that he was responsible for the death of his wife following a severe domestic dispute inside their Los Angeles home. The case immediately ended his acting career and shifted all attention to the criminal proceedings that followed. During the trial, prosecutors focused on intent and responsibility rather than sensational detail. Testimony and evidence painted a picture of a marriage under strain, financial pressure, and emotional instability. Jace admitted his role in the incident but attempted to explain his actions as the result of overwhelming personal distress. The court ultimately rejected arguments for leniency. In 2016, Michael Jace was convicted of second-degree murder. He received a sentence of 40 years to life in prison, a ruling that ensured he would spend the majority, if not all, of his remaining years incarcerated. The decision reflected the seriousness of the crime and the lasting impact on the family left behind. Jace's fall was especially jarring because of the contrast between his screen persona and real-life actions. A man once cast as a protector of the law became an example of how personal collapse can lead to irreversible consequences. Today, Michael Jace is no longer remembered for his performances. His story stands as a grim reminder that no role, reputation, or career can shield someone from accountability when control is lost and choices carry permanent weight. Bill Cosby. The criminal case of Bill Cosby marked one of the most dramatic reversals of public image in entertainment history. For decades, Cosby was celebrated as a symbol of family values and moral authority, especially through The Cosby Show. His reputation as America's dad seemed untouchable. That image unraveled when multiple women came forward with allegations that led to criminal charges. Prosecutors focused on one specific case, building their argument around testimony timelines and corroborating evidence rather than sensational detail. The central issue before the court was consent and whether Cosby had abused trust and influence behind closed doors. In 2018, Cosby was convicted in Pennsylvania on felony charges related to sexual assault. The verdict was historic, making him one of the first major celebrities convicted in the era shaped by broader conversations about accountability and power. He was sentenced to several years in state prison, a moment that sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Although Cosby later won an appeal and was released due to procedural issues, the conviction and trial permanently altered how the public viewed his legacy. His release did not erase the testimonies or the cultural impact of the case, which continued to shape discussions about justice, celebrity, and responsibility. Today, Bill Cosby's name no longer represents wholesome entertainment. Instead, it stands at the center of a complex and polarizing debate about power accountability and how society confronts allegations against influential figures. Drew Drexel. For years, Drew Drexel was known as one of the strongest competitors in televised obstacle racing. On American Ninja Warrior, he was celebrated for disciplined focus and physical mastery. Viewers saw him as a symbol of perseverance and clean competition, someone who had turned athletic dedication into national recognition. That image collapsed abruptly when federal authorities brought charges that shifted his story from sports achievement to criminal court. The case centered on allegations involving an inappropriate relationship with a minor, raising immediate concerns about trust boundaries and responsibility. From that moment on, Drexel's public identity was no longer defined by performance, but by the seriousness of the accusations. Prosecutors framed the case around communication travel and intent, carefully avoiding sensational language while emphasizing the imbalance of power involved. The focus was not on graphic detail, but on how influence and access were allegedly misused over time. Drexel's defense maintained his innocence, but the legal process moved forward with significant scrutiny. In court, the charges carried severe potential consequences under federal law. The athlete who once competed for prize money and titles now faced the reality of long-term incarceration. Sponsorships vanished, public appearances stopped, and the television network distanced itself completely. Drexel ultimately received a lengthy prison sentence, bringing a definitive end to his career in competitive entertainment. The fall was swift and absolute. One season, he stood under bright lights and cheering crowds. The next, he stood before a judge. His story serves as a stark reminder that public admiration does not erase private responsibility. In the world of fame and competition, trust is fragile, and once broken, no amount of past achievement can restore it. Achievement can restore it. Achievement can restore it. Achievement can restore it. Ian Watkins. The criminal case of Ian Watkins is widely regarded as one of the most shocking scandals in modern music history. At the height of his career, Watkins was the lead singer of the rock band Lost Prophets, selling millions of albums and commanding a devoted global fan base. His public image was built on success, influence, and admiration. That image collapsed in 2012 when British authorities arrested Watkins following a long investigation into extremely serious offenses involving minors. Prosecutors focused on evidence gathered from digital devices, communications, and witness testimony. Rather than relying on explicit descriptions, the case centered on intent, planning, and repeated violations of the law over an extended period. The court heard that Watkins abused his position and access, exploiting trust in ways that crossed the most fundamental legal and moral boundaries. Investigators emphasized that the crimes were not isolated incidents, but part of a sustained pattern of behavior. The severity of the case placed it among the most serious of its kind in the UK legal system. Watkins pleaded guilty to multiple charges and in 2013 was sentenced to 35 years in prison with additional post-release restrictions. The judge described the crimes as exceptionally grave and stated that the sentence reflected the need to protect the public above all else. Lost Prophets disbanded immediately, and Watkins' music career was erased almost overnight. His name became synonymous not with art, but with betrayal and abuse of power. Michael Jace. Michael Jace built a solid career playing law enforcement figures, most notably on the television series The Shield. On screen, he embodied authority, discipline, and control. For years, audiences associated his face with order and justice, never suspecting that his real life was moving toward a tragic and irreversible collapse. In 2014, Jace's name entered the public record under devastating circumstances. Authorities confirmed that he was responsible for the death of his wife following a severe domestic dispute inside their Los Angeles home. The case immediately ended his acting career and shifted all attention to the criminal proceedings that followed. During the trial, prosecutors focused on intent and responsibility rather than sensational detail. Testimony and evidence painted a picture of a marriage under strain, financial pressure, and emotional instability. Jace admitted his role in the incident but attempted to explain his actions as the result of overwhelming personal distress. The court ultimately rejected arguments for leniency. In 2016, Michael Jace was convicted of second-degree murder. He received a sentence of 40 years to life in prison, a ruling that ensured he would spend the majority, if not all, of his remaining years incarcerated. Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson was once a familiar face on American television, best known for his role as Stephen Hyde on That 70s Show. Riding the success of the series, he went on to appear in projects like Men at Work and later The Ranch, where he reunited with former co-star Ashton Kutcher. For years, Masterson appeared to have a stable career and a loyal fan base. That image, however, began to collapse in 2017. That year, the Los Angeles Police Department launched an investigation after 3 women came forward with serious allegations against him. They claimed that between 2001 and 2003, Masterson assaulted them at his home, alleging they were incapacitated at the time. Despite the growing scrutiny and public backlash, Masterson consistently maintained his innocence throughout the legal process. The first trial ended without a verdict after the jury failed to reach a unanimous decision. But during a retrial the following year, the outcome changed dramatically. Masterson was convicted on 2 of the 3 charges and sentenced to 30 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole only after serving at least 25 years. He is currently incarcerated at a men's correctional facility in California located between San Francisco and Los Angeles. A controversial element of the case involved the Church of Scientology, of which both Masterson and the accusers were members. The women alleged the church attempted to protect him and discouraged them from reporting the incidents to authorities. One accuser stated she was warned not to use certain language and was threatened with social isolation if she contacted police. The Church of Scientology has denied these claims, asserting it does not prevent members from reporting crimes and insists on adherence to the law. Suge Knight. One of the most influential and controversial figures in the history of hip-hop. As the co-founder of Death Row Records, Knight played a pivotal role in shaping the West Coast rap scene during the 1990s. Under his leadership, the label became home to some of the biggest names in the genre and dominated the charts, leaving a lasting mark on music culture. At his peak, Knight was seen as a powerful force whose influence extended far beyond the recording studio. However, Knight's legacy was always intertwined with legal trouble. Throughout his career, he faced numerous lawsuits, arrests, and violent confrontations that often overshadowed his musical achievements. His aggressive reputation and turbulent personal life became almost as famous as the artists he helped promote, fueling years of controversy around his name. In 2015, Knight's long history of legal issues reached a critical point during an incident that occurred while production was underway on the biopic Straight Outta Compton. Following an altercation, Knight was accused of using his vehicle to strike 2 men, resulting in the death of Terry Carter and serious injuries to another individual. The incident sparked widespread media attention and marked a dramatic turning point in his life. Originally charged with murder, Knight ultimately entered a plea agreement and pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter. In 2018, he was sentenced to 28 years in prison with the possibility of parole set for 2034. Now behind bars, Suge Knight's story stands as a stark contrast between extraordinary influence and personal downfall, a reminder that even the most powerful figures in entertainment are not immune to the consequences of their actions. Ryan Grantham. Next on the list is Ryan Grantham, a former child actor whose early career suggested a bright future in film and television. Grantham became widely recognized for his role as Rodney James in the 2010 family hit Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He also appeared in The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus and later made a guest appearance on the CW series Riverdale. With more than 30 acting credits to his name, Grantham seemed poised for long-term success in the industry. That promising trajectory came to a sudden and devastating halt when he was just 21 years old. In a shocking turn of events, Grantham was responsible for the death of his own mother at their home in British Columbia. The incident stunned both the entertainment world and the public, as few could reconcile such a tragedy with the image of a former child star who had grown up in the spotlight. Following the incident, authorities revealed that Grantham had been struggling with severe mental health issues. During court proceedings, his legal team disclosed evaluations from court-appointed psychiatrists who concluded that he was suffering from major depression, substance-related disorders, and other serious psychological conditions at the time. Grantham ultimately pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, acknowledging responsibility for his actions and expressing a desire to rehabilitate and someday help others. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term and will be eligible to apply for parole in 2036 after serving at least 14 years. Ryan Grantham's story stands as one of the most tragic examples of a young life derailed, highlighting how untreated mental health struggles can lead to irreversible consequences even for someone who once seemed destined for success. How do you feel about Ryan Grantham's act of killing his own mother? If you were the judge, how many years in prison would you sentence him to? Comment a number below. Jo Sun, a former mixed martial artist and character actor whose life became defined less by his brief moments on screen and more by a series of shocking criminal convictions. Born in South Korea, Sun later moved to the United States where he pursued a career in professional fighting. While he failed to make a major impact in the UFC, he found modest success in Hollywood, often cast as villains in low-budget action films alongside stars like Lorenzo Lamas and Dolph Lundgren. He became most recognizable to mainstream audiences for his role as Random Task in the 1997 comedy Austin Powers International Man of Mystery. Behind the scenes, however, Sun's life was spiraling. In 2008, he was arrested for vandalizing his roommate's car, an incident that initially appeared minor. During the investigation, his DNA was entered into a database and unexpectedly linked him to a decades-old cold case. Authorities determined that Sun had been involved in a violent crime committed in 1990, which had gone unsolved for nearly 18 years. Because the statute of limitations had expired on some charges, Sun was convicted on felony torture and sentenced to 7 years to life in prison. Even after that conviction, his violent behavior did not end. Shortly after being released on parole, Sun was involved in another deadly incident inside prison, resulting in an additional conviction and a longer sentence. Today, Jo Sun is serving time with little chance of release. His story represents a dramatic and disturbing fall from cult film notoriety to permanent incarceration, underscoring how unresolved violence and repeated criminal behavior can completely erase even the briefest taste of fame. Amy Locane, an actress who showed early promise in Hollywood during the late 1980s and early 1990s. Locane made her film debut opposite Johnny Depp in John Waters' Cry Baby, a cult classic that helped launch her career. She later earned critical praise for her role in Blue Sky, which brought her a Young Artist Award nomination and became widely known to television audiences through the hit series Melrose Place. At the height of her career, Locane made a personal decision to step away from acting to focus on raising her family. For years, she remained largely out of the public eye, living a quieter life far from Hollywood. That relative obscurity ended abruptly on the night of June 27, 2010, when she was involved in a tragic car accident in New Jersey. According to court records, Locane was driving well above the speed limit when her vehicle collided with another car turning into a driveway. The crash resulted in the death of Helen Seaman, a respected university professor. When police arrived at the scene, Locane was found to have a blood alcohol level significantly over the legal limit. She was later charged with second-degree vehicular manslaughter and assault by auto. In 2013, Locane was initially sentenced to 3 years in prison, a punishment many felt was too lenient given the circumstances. An appeals court later agreed, ruling that the sentence did not adequately reflect the severity of the case. As a result, her sentence was increased to 8 years. Locane is currently serving her time at a correctional facility in New Jersey, with eligibility for parole set for late 2024. Her story is often cited as a sobering reminder of how a single night and one reckless decision can permanently alter multiple lives. Next is Michael Jace, an actor best known for portraying police officer Julian Lowe on the hit FX series The Shield. During the early 2000s, Jace built a solid career in television and film with appearances in major productions such as Forrest Gump and Boogie Nights. His role on The Shield brought him widespread recognition and positioned him as a familiar face in crime dramas, often playing characters sworn to uphold the law. That public image was shattered by a tragic and deeply disturbing incident that occurred in 2014 at his home in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. According to prosecutors, Jace, driven by jealousy and fear that his wife April might leave him, confronted her during an argument. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, he shot her inside their home while their two young sons, aged 5 and 8, were present. The crime shocked the public and devastated his family, instantly ending his acting career. During the trial, evidence showed that Jace had been drinking and was consumed by paranoia and emotional instability. The jury ultimately rejected his defense and convicted him of second-degree murder. In 2016, Michael Jace was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. Before sentencing, he expressed remorse, admitting that his actions were unjustifiable and acknowledging the irreversible harm he caused. Jace is currently serving his sentence at a California state prison. His story stands as a haunting reminder of how unchecked anger and jealousy can lead to irreversible consequences, destroying not only a career but an entire family in a single devastating moment. Harvey Weinstein. Once considered one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood, as the co-founder of Miramax, Weinstein played a major role in shaping modern cinema, backing critically acclaimed and award-winning films such as Pulp Fiction, Good Will Hunting, and Shakespeare in Love. At the height of his influence, he was seen as a kingmaker whose support could launch careers and secure Oscar wins. That image collapsed in 2017 when years of rumors turned into public revelations. An investigation published by the New York Times detailed allegations from multiple women accusing Weinstein of sexual harassment and abuse. Soon after, The New Yorker released a follow-up report that expanded the scope of the accusations, with nearly 100 women eventually coming forward, including several well-known actresses. The stories painted a consistent picture of abuse of power carried out over decades behind closed doors. In 2018, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office charged Weinstein with rape, criminal sexual acts, and misconduct involving multiple victims. Testimony during the trial, including from actress Annabella Sciorra, further underscored the seriousness of the accusations. In 2020, Weinstein was convicted and sentenced to 23 years in prison in New York. His legal troubles did not end there. He later faced additional charges in Los Angeles and received a separate 16-year sentence. Weinstein is currently serving his sentence at a correctional facility in New York. Given the length of his combined sentences and his age, many believe he is likely to spend the rest of his life behind bars. His downfall is widely viewed as a turning point in Hollywood, symbolizing the collapse of unchecked power and the lasting consequences of long-hidden misconduct. Do you know exactly which prison Harvey Weinstein is being held in? Mohawk Correctional Facility or Vernon C. Bain Center? Jen Shah, a figure who rose to fame through The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. On screen, Jen Shah projected an image of confidence, wealth, and dominance, loud, fearless, and always in control. She thrived in the spotlight, often presenting herself as a powerful businesswoman living a luxurious life. Behind the scenes, however, a very different reality was unfolding. In March 2021, Shah was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. Federal prosecutors alleged that she played a central role in a nationwide telemarketing scheme that targeted elderly victims. According to court documents, the victims were promised business services and financial opportunities that were largely worthless, while their savings were drained piece by piece. As the case moved forward, the emotional contrast became striking. Messages and recordings presented in court painted a picture of someone detached from the human cost of the scheme. Prosecutors described moments where Shah allegedly mocked victims' desperation, discussing strategies to keep them emotionally engaged and sending more money. The confident persona seen on television gave way to mounting pressure as evidence stacked up. When Shah finally appeared in court to accept responsibility, the emotional shift was undeniable. Gone was the bravado. She broke down in tears, her voice shaking as she admitted she had let greed override her values and judgment. She spoke of shame, regret, and the realization that her actions had caused irreversible harm to people who trusted her. That moment marked the collapse of the image she had built so carefully for years. Jen Shah was sentenced to 6.5 years in federal prison and is currently serving her time in Texas. Her downfall serves as a stark reminder that fame and television stardom offer no protection when reality sets in, and that the emotional reckoning often comes long after the damage is done. Shannon Richardson. a television actress who appeared in popular series such as The Walking Dead and The Vampire Diaries. While her acting career never reached major stardom, her name became nationally known for reasons far removed from Hollywood success. In 2013, Richardson became the center of a federal investigation after a series of letters containing ricin, a highly toxic substance, were mailed to prominent public figures. Among the intended recipients were then-President Barack Obama and New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. The case immediately triggered nationwide alarm as the letters were treated as potential acts of domestic terrorism. What made the case even more shocking was the motive behind it. Investigators uncovered that Richardson had sent the poisoned letters herself and then attempted to frame her estranged husband, falsely accusing him of being responsible. Evidence showed she had researched how to obtain and use ricin and deliberately tried to manipulate authorities during the investigation. As the truth emerged, Richardson's composure collapsed. In court, she appeared visibly shaken as prosecutors laid out the evidence, including her attempts to mislead investigators and shift blame. The public image of a working actress was replaced by that of someone willing to endanger lives to gain leverage in a personal dispute. In 2014, Shannon Richardson pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Her case stands as a disturbing example of how personal vendettas, when combined with calculated deception, can escalate into crimes with national consequences, ending not only a career, but any chance of public redemption. Todd Chrisley and Julie Chrisley. The married couple who built a television empire around wealth, perfection, and control through their hit reality series Chrisley Knows Best. For years, viewers watched them flaunt a lavish lifestyle, designer clothes, luxury homes, and a family image that seemed untouchable. Todd, in particular, portrayed himself as a self-made real estate mogul who always had the final word. That carefully constructed image began to crack in 2019 when federal investigators revealed a very different story. Prosecutors accused the couple of engaging in a long-running scheme involving bank fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. According to court records, Todd and Julie exaggerated their finances to secure massive loans, submitted false documents to banks, and hid millions of dollars in income from the IRS, all to maintain the lifestyle audiences saw on screen. As the case went to trial, the emotional shift was unmistakable. Todd, once outspoken and defiant, was forced to sit silently as evidence dismantled the persona he had built over decades. Julie, often described as the calmer presence, appeared visibly shaken as recordings, emails, and financial records were laid bare. The illusion of control slowly gave way to anxiety, fear, and disbelief as the reality of prison time became unavoidable. When sentencing day arrived, the courtroom atmosphere was heavy. Todd appeared stunned, struggling to process the idea that his fame and confidence could not shield him from consequences. Julie broke down in tears, expressing regret over the impact their actions would have on their children. Despite emotional pleas, the judge handed down strict sentences. Todd received 12 years in federal prison while Julie was sentenced to 7 years. Both are currently serving their sentences at separate federal facilities in Florida. Their story stands as a powerful reminder that behind the smiles, scripted moments, and televised luxury, reality always catches up. Fame may amplify success, but it also magnifies the fall when the truth finally comes to light. War Machine John Copenhaver. Born Jonathan Paul Copenhaver, a mixed martial artist who once appeared destined for success inside the cage. Known for his strength and aggressive fighting style, War Machine competed in several major MMA organizations, including appearances connected to the UFC and the reality series The Ultimate Fighter. At his peak, he built a loyal fan base and was viewed as a rising name in the sport. That promising path collapsed in 2014 following a violent incident involving his former partner, adult film actress Christy Mack. Prosecutors stated that after their relationship ended, War Machine confronted her and carried out a prolonged and brutal attack. The incident left multiple victims seriously injured and shocked both the MMA community and the public. What followed was an intense manhunt that ended with his arrest days later. As the case moved through the courts, the emotional and psychological unraveling of War Machine became evident. Once defiant and confrontational, he later appeared unstable and detached during proceedings. The confident fighter persona disappeared, replaced by moments of visible agitation, despair, and loss of control as the reality of lifelong consequences set in. In 2017, War Machine was convicted on numerous felony charges, including sexual assault, kidnapping, and multiple counts of violent assault. He was acquitted of attempted murder, but still received an extremely severe sentence. In 2018, the court sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole no earlier than 2053. His story stands as one of the most extreme examples of a complete fall from public recognition to permanent incarceration. What once looked like a future built on fame and athletic success ended in isolation behind bars, a reminder that unchecked rage and violence can erase everything in a single, irreversible collapse. Jerry Harris. The breakout star of Netflix's documentary series Cheer. With his explosive energy, constant smile, and motivational catchphrases, Harris quickly became a fan favorite and a symbol of positivity within the cheerleading world. His sudden rise brought national fame, major media appearances, and lucrative opportunities that few could have imagined. That image collapsed in September 2020 when Harris was arrested and federally charged with a series of serious crimes. Prosecutors allege that over several years, Harris used social media platforms to contact and manipulate underage boys. According to court records, he coerced minors into sending explicit images and videos, sometimes offering money or gifts in exchange. He was charged with production of child sexual abuse material, receipt of such material, and coercion and enticement of minors' offenses that carry severe federal penalties. Investigators uncovered extensive digital evidence, including messages and files that demonstrated a repeated pattern of behavior rather than an isolated incident. The details presented in court stunned the public, especially given Harris's carefully crafted public persona as a joyful role model for young athletes. What fans once viewed as charisma and encouragement was now overshadowed by evidence of calculated exploitation. In court, Harris appeared withdrawn and visibly shaken, a stark contrast to the loud, confident personality seen on screen. As the charges were read and evidence reviewed, the reality of his actions and their consequences became unavoidable. In 2022, Jerry Harris was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release with strict conditions. His case serves as a chilling reminder that fame can mask disturbing behavior, and that when the truth emerges, the fall is swift and unforgiving. The same spotlight that elevated Jerry Harris ultimately exposed him, leaving behind a legacy defined not by talent or inspiration, but by serious crimes and broken trust. Chris Wu, also known as Wu Yifan, a global pop star whose career spanned music, film, and international endorsements. Rising to fame as a former member of the K-pop group EXO, Chris Wu later built a hugely successful solo career in China, becoming one of the most recognizable faces in Asian entertainment. He starred in major films, worked with global brands, and cultivated an image of confidence, luxury, and influence. That image came crashing down in July 2021 when multiple women publicly accused Wu of serious sexual offenses. The allegations triggered a massive public backlash and prompted Chinese authorities to open a criminal investigation. As more testimony emerged, the case quickly escalated from online controversy to a full-scale legal crisis, abruptly halting his career. Brands cut ties, his music was removed from platforms, and his public presence vanished almost overnight. In court, prosecutors accused Chris Wu of repeated sexual assault, describing a pattern of abusing his celebrity status to manipulate and exploit victims. The trial revealed a stark contrast between the carefully managed public persona and the behavior outlined by investigators. Once known for his confidence and dominance on stage, Wu reportedly appeared subdued and emotionless during proceedings, facing the reality that fame could no longer protect him. In November 2022, Chris Wu was convicted and sentenced to 13 years in prison, followed by deportation after completing his sentence. The verdict marked a definitive end to his career in entertainment. His downfall sent shockwaves through the global music industry and served as a powerful warning. International fame, wealth, and influence offer no shield when the law intervenes. The silence that followed his conviction was as loud as the stardom he once commanded. Recently, information claiming that Chris Wu has passed away has been spreading widely on social media. Is this true or not? We are very curious to know. Darren Sharper. A former NFL star whose fall from grace shocked both the sports world and the public. Sharper enjoyed a highly successful 14-year career as a safety playing for teams such as the Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings, and New Orleans Saints. He was a 5-time Pro Bowl selection, a 2-time All-Pro, and a key contributor to the Saints' Super Bowl victory, cementing his reputation as one of the most accomplished defensive players of his era. That legacy unraveled in 2014 when multiple women across different states came forward with disturbing allegations. Investigators discovered a pattern. Sharper allegedly drugged women without their knowledge and sexually assaulted them while they were incapacitated. The cases spanned several states, including California, Nevada, Arizona, and Louisiana. What initially appeared to be isolated incidents soon revealed a coordinated and repeated course of conduct. As the evidence mounted, Sharper's public image collapsed. Once celebrated for discipline and leadership on the field, he now faced overwhelming proof of calculated abuse of trust. In 2016, Sharper pleaded guilty or no contest to charges involving drugging and sexually assaulting at least 16 women. The scope of the crimes and the number of victims shocked even seasoned prosecutors. At sentencing, Sharper appeared subdued and defeated, a far cry from the confident athlete fans once admired. The court handed down an 18-year prison sentence reflecting both the severity and the multi-state nature of his crimes. He is currently serving his sentence largely removed from public view. Darren Sharper's story stands as a stark reminder that professional success and public admiration can conceal deeply troubling behavior, and that when the truth emerges, even the most celebrated careers can be erased by the weight of undeniable wrongdoing. William Hayden. A former reality television star best known for appearing on the Discovery Channel series Sons of Guns. The show, which premiered in 2011, followed the Hayden family and their custom firearms business, presenting William Hayden as a tough, outspoken patriarch and skilled businessman. For several seasons, the series drew strong ratings and built a loyal audience fascinated by the family dynamic and their controversial line of work. That public image collapsed in 2014 when Hayden was arrested and charged with multiple felony offenses. Prosecutors accused him of serious sexual crimes involving 2 victims, with incidents occurring decades apart. The allegations stood in stark contrast to the authoritative, family-centered persona he displayed on television. As details emerged, the shock was immediate, and the network swiftly canceled Sons of Guns, cutting all ties with the Hayden family. During the trial, testimony painted a disturbing picture that left little room for doubt. Hayden, once loud and confrontational in front of cameras, appeared visibly shaken in court as the weight of the accusations settled in. The confidence that once defined him faded, replaced by silence and a growing sense of inevitability as the jury reviewed the evidence. In 2015, William Hayden was found guilty on multiple counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict effectively erased his television legacy overnight. His case became a grim example of how a carefully crafted reality TV image can hide deeply troubling behavior, and how when exposed, the fall is absolute. What remains is a cautionary tale. Fame can amplify success, but it also magnifies disgrace. When the truth surfaced, there was no redemption arc, only a permanent end to both freedom and public standing. Freedom and public standing. Freedom and public standing. Freedom and public standing. Darren Sharper. A former NFL star whose fall from grace shocked both the sports world and the public. Sharper enjoyed a highly successful 14-year career as a safety playing for teams such as the Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings, and New Orleans Saints. He was a 5-time Pro Bowl selection, a 2-time All-Pro, and a key contributor to the Saints' Super Bowl victory, cementing his reputation as one of the most accomplished defensive players of his era. That legacy unraveled in 2014 when multiple women across different states came forward with disturbing allegations. Investigators discovered a pattern. Sharper allegedly drugged women without their knowledge and sexually assaulted them while they were incapacitated. The cases spanned several states, including California, Nevada, Arizona, and Louisiana. What initially appeared to be isolated incidents soon revealed a coordinated and repeated course of conduct. As the evidence mounted, Sharper's public image collapsed. Once celebrated for discipline and leadership on the field, he now faced overwhelming proof of calculated abuse of trust. In 2016, Sharper pleaded guilty or no contest to charges involving drugging and sexually assaulting at least 16 women. The scope of the crimes and the number of victims shocked even seasoned prosecutors. At sentencing, Sharper appeared subdued and defeated, a far cry from the confident athlete fans once admired. The court handed down an 18-year prison sentence reflecting both the severity and the multi-state nature of his crimes. He is currently serving his sentence largely removed from public view. Darren Sharper's story stands as a stark reminder that professional success and public admiration